So we're on Pei Aleph Amud Aleph around just over halfway down the page. So 81A2. So we have a machlokus between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. In certain cases, does the wife have the right to sell certain properties that she got at certain times or not? So we said that Beis Shammai makes a drasha from the words of the Kesuva and Beis Hillel doesn't. So So the question is that the Ksuva says when you get married to someone else, you're going to take what's written to you. Valeka, and it doesn't have in this case. So we're talking about a case where a woman was married, her husband died, she has to do Yibum, but they haven't done Yibum yet. Now, a Ksuva that she gets will get paid from her late husband's estate, even if the brother-in-law marries her in Yibum. If he would later divorce her, his estates aren't encumbered for the Ksuva, but it's the dead brother Ksuva. But here, because she's not able to marry someone else because she's waiting for Yibum, she can't get her Ksuva. So this phrase was in the Ksuva. When you get married to someone else, you're going to take what was written to you, Valeka. But here she can't because she can't get married to someone else. So Amar Ravashi, Yavam Nami Ka'achar Dami. Ravashi says when she gets married to someone else, her brother-in-law, the Yavam, is considered someone else. So therefore, what's wrong? Okay. Shalach le Rava Abaye biyad Rav Shmaya bar Zera. So Rava sent to Abaye because they had a machlokas about this. So they were sending. Sometimes they sent messengers about this machlokas. So Rav Shmaya bar Zera was the messenger. So he said last week that Beis Hillel, I think it was, holds that ksuva, it's as if it got collected while the husband's still alive. It's not that it gets paid out. It's not, but it's as if. So is that really true? But Tana, we learned in the Brayso. So Rabbi Abba Omer, Sha'alti Sumchos, I asked Sumchos. The road says Shayim Korbanich say Achev. If someone wants to sell his brother's property, meaning his brother, his here, just put it down there, and I'll get it. Yeah, it's fine. Thank you. Yes, I know. Have a Shana Tova. If someone wants to sell his brother's property, meaning he did Yibum, so he gets the guy's wife and he also inherits the fields, but he can't sell his brother's fields because they're encumbered for the Ksuva. So what should he do? So Im Kohen who Yasasuda. If he's a Kohen, so the problem with being a Kohen is that he can't divorce her and remarry her. A Kohen is not allowed to, because a Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorced woman. He's not even to remarry his wife that he had divorced. So she's not divorced from someone else, even that he can't remarry. He can't remarry her. So because he's a Kohen, he has to make a meal and make her happy enough to get her permission to let her sell the land. Im Yisrael, if he is not a Kohen, which means includes it could be a Levi, Megarish beged v'yachzer, he should divorce her with a get and then remarry her, because the Ksuva will get paid, and now from the brother's estate, and now there's nothing else from the brother's estate that's encumbered for the Ksuva. So they can get remarried, and he can sell his late brother's field. So so if we hold that the ksuva can be collected while the person's still alive, let him set aside a certain amount of property to pay the ksuva, and they don't need to get divorced. He could sell the rest. So that was Rava's question. Well, tamech. So Rabbi said, according to you, mimas nisan. Why don't you ask directly from our Mishnah? Why did you bring this brayso from Kesuvos? I mean, from Sumchos. Ask it from our Mishnah. Lo yomer la hare tzivasa b'nachas lecha al shochan al kol nechaz b'chayin leksuvasa. He's not allowed to tell his wife that, here, I put aside money for your ksuva. Rather, all of his property is encumbered for the ksuva. So the Mishnah already says that we can. So what if your question is a question that the ksuba can't be collected from life? We see in our Mishnah this. So so we see from the Mishnah that well, so why didn't Rabbi ask from our Mishnah? Because Rabbi is saying our Mishnah is giving him good advice. The ilo temahachi, because if we don't say this, that he shouldn't designate money or property for ksuva, so this would make more sense if it was money, not property. The ilo temahachi, if you don't say this, safe if it's not good advice. Safe at the Tani, the last part of the Mishnah that said, a person can't tell his wife. It's not just talking about a yibum case, but stam his wife. He can't say that I put aside money for ksuva. In the literal phrase, their money is on the table here. All of his property is encumbered for the ksuva of his wife. According to that, if the rate is exactly like the seifa, how could a man ever sell his own property? Because why don't we say that his property is also encumbered for his wife's ksuva? So how you can't? Would you say here that he can't sell it? So it's only it's just giving us good advice. So therefore, in the previous case of the Mishnah, it's just giving good advice. Elad Rabbi Abba kasha, but the question of Rabbi Abba is a question. So Rabbi Abba lo kasha mishum eva. So according to Rabbi Abba, why are you allowed to put money aside? Why can't you put money aside or tell your wife I have certain lands designated for the ksuva and sell the rest? Because if he would, there's eva. There's going to be a sense of resentment between her that he's saying that she feels that he wants to get rid of me. He already did this, so that's called ava. So another case for halach of ava comes is that a Jewish doctor is allowed to treat non-Jewish patients on Shabbos. So even though the heter to be machal Shabbos for medical care is so we should break one Shabbos so a person could keep many Shabbosos. So that applies for a Jew who's going to keep Shabbos, but a non-Jew who doesn't keep Shabbos, what's the heter? So there's two schools of thought. One school of thought is that even for a non-Jew, because it's a human, you could be Michal Shabbos to save them because human life is important enough. And the second thing, and the other reason is because of Ava. If we don't treat their patients, they will. That's not garbage, Al. Just leave it there. I need to take that. Okay. Is if we wouldn't treat their patients, they would resent us, and then also they would maybe retaliate, and their doctors may not treat our patients who are sick. So because of Ava, we would allow a Jewish doctor to be Machal Shabbos to treat a non-Jewish patient. So not all poskim would read Ava, but some poskim use this idea of Ava, this resentment, for a reason for this. Okay, how Gavra Denafla Yavama Pamtisa. A certain person, his brother died, and I guess the brother lived in Pampadisa, so his Yavama, his late brother's wife, who he would have to do Yibum with, lived in Pampadisa. Boy, so okay, so there was more than one brother. So the mitzvah is for the oldest brother to do Yibum. He is the first right. But a younger brother wanted to give a get, and the halacha is if one of the brothers will give her a get, then they're not allowed to, no one's allowed to do Yibum once a get was given, even though a get is not a way to get out of Yibum, but it makes the Yibum process not able to take effect, and they have to do Chalitza. So Amarle, the brother said, "My daitach." So it said the brother wanted to make her puzzle to do Yibum by giving her a get. So before the brother did so, the older brother said, "Don't do this. Why do you want to give her a get? Is it because you want to split our late brother's fields? And so if I would marry her, I would get all the fields, and you don't want that?" My daitach mishum nechseh is the reason that you want to do this is because of the property, and you want to get a share of it. Ana benichse paginalach. I will split it with you. So it happened to be that well, so some say that he meant this, and some say that he told the brother this, but he wasn't gonna actually give it to him. Rav Yosef says, and since the Chachamim said you're not allowed to sell the brother's fields, if he would have sold it, the sale wouldn't be a property. So therefore, the brother saying this, I'll split it with you, it has no meaning because he's not allowed to sell the fields himself. So there's nothing for him to split with the other brother right now, because all of the property is stuck in limbo until the wife would either die or until the other brother the other brother would die, the one who did Yibum. The Tanya, because we learned in the Brayso Yavam, if someone died and he left a widow, so she's waiting for Yibum. The Shomeres Yavam is his wife, his widow. And he let even 100 mana of his estate was 100 mana. Even if her ksuba was only 1 mana, so his estate is 100 times what's in the ksuba. So even if we pay out the ksuva, there's plenty of money in the ksuva. There's 99 times, or there's 100 times what they owe for the ksuva in his whole estate. Rav Yosef says the Brisa says he's not allowed to sell any of the fields because all the fields are encumbered for the ksuva. Amalei Abaye, but Abaye said, no, Abaye was actually a Talmud of Rav Yosef. So Abaye says, so wherever the Chachamim says that you're not allowed to sell, you're saying if you would sell, it doesn't take effect. That's not true. I'll tell you a case where the Chachamim said not to sell, but if you sold, the sale goes through. But now we learned in our Mishnah, Beishamei Omrim Timkor, Beisol Omer Lo Timkor. Beishamei says that this woman who got property after she got kedushin, after she got the ring, but before chuppah, Beishamei says she's allowed to sell or give away the fields that she inherited. Beisol says she's not allowed to. But Beisol agree, even though Beisol says she shouldn't sell them, if she did sell them, it takes effect. So we see the Chachamim said not to sell, but if she sold it, it does take effect. So Shalchan Kameler of Chanina Bar Papi. So they sent this question to Rav Chanina Bar Papi, Shalchan to Rav Yosef. So he answered like Rav Yosef. Rabbi said, Atu Rav Chanina Bar Papi, keep a talala. Did Chanina Bar Papi put any earrings on it? He didn't give any reason. He just says the sale doesn't come through. But he didn't give a reason why. I'm asking you a good question from our Mishnah, and he's not giving a reason why. So Shalcho Kamed Rav Menyume Braid Rav Nechumi. So they sent the question to Rav Menyume Braid Rav Nechumi. Shalcho Kirabaye. He passing like Abaye that it's true sometimes when you that if the brother who did Yibum sold the estate, even though he shouldn't have sold fields from the estate, but if he did, it takes effect. But he added, if Rav Yosef will give another reason, you have to tell me, because maybe I'm going to change my mind. So Rav Menyume Braid Rav Nechumi saw Abaye's case, Abaye's reasoning, but he said if Rav Yosef comes up with another reason, you have to let me know, because maybe I'm going to change my psak. But based on all the information I have right now, my psak is that because this field could get sold, or if it was sold, it would take effect. The older brother is allowed to tell the younger brother that I'll split the fields with you, even though they're kind of in limbo right now and they can't be sold. Rav Yosef went and he sifted through things and he found another reason to support his psak. The Tanya, because we learned in the Brayso, if someone was, so two brothers, one lent money to the other one. So the one brother was collecting the payment back. But then the brother who owed the brother who had made the loan, who wanted his money back, he died, and now his wife is to Yibum with the brother. So so Reuven was a brother. Reuven lent money to Shimon. Shimon didn't pay yet, even though Reuven was asking him to repay. Reuven died, and now his wife is still alive. They didn't have kids, so Shimon has to do Yibum with Reuven's wife. So lo yomer hoel v'shani yoresh chazakti. So Shimon, who says, since I inherited my brother, I now have chazaka in the loan. And because Shimon owed money for the loan. Shimon now inherited Ruvain's estate, which included this loan. So he owns the loan against himself now. Understand? It's like if you borrow money from the bank and then you buy the whole bank, you owe the money to yourself. What's the big deal? That's basically what we're talking about. Elamotzian miyavam. Rather, you have to take the money from Shimon, the surviving brother, v'yikach behem karka, and he has to buy land with it, v'hu ochel peiros, and that property is also encumbered for the ksuva, but Shimon is allowed to get the peiros, benefit from the peiros from that field. So Rav Yosef is saying, we see that we do not let him sell the field, sell anything. The fact that even this money, which he now owes himself, is not considered paid back, shows that the brother doesn't even have a right to sell anything of his dead brother's estate. So Amarle Abaye Dilma Detava Abdullah. Abaye said, well, maybe this Mishnah is giving a good advice. So that's how Rashi says it's good advice. I'm a little not sure about it because a few lines up, Rava used the term Eitza Tova. And if it was Eitza Tova, I would think it should use the same lashon. But I mean, it is possible that Abaye would talk with certain words and Rava would use a different expression. It is possible, but I'm just a little curious why it doesn't say Eitza Tova. But that's how Rashi explains it. He's giving him good advice that he should, the amount that the loan was worth, he should buy a piece of land, and that's also encumbered for Reuven's widow's ksuva. Amarle, so Rav Yosef said, Tana Motzian. But the Tana said we have to take away that money from. It says if you look, it's right after footnote 14. It says Ela Motzin miyavam. Beis Din takes the money from the yavam and makes him buy a field with it. So it's not advice. We're saying Beis Din actually has to take it away by force if necessary. If he's refusing to part with that money, they have to extract the money from him and put it in a trust. The form of the trust is it's a piece of land the beneficiary is the wife's ksuva, and but he's allowed to get payros from it while she's still alive. V'yamar Tatava le Abdullah, and you're saying that they're giving him good advice that he should buy a field as if to put this money in a trust with the ksuva. So how do Shalcho Kamei to Rav Newman? So Rav Yosef is saying from the text of the Brisa, it can't be talking about good advice. Hadar Shalcha Kamei Rav Newman Braid Rav Nahumi. So then they sent the question again to Rav Newman. Hadar means again. They repeated it with this new proof that Rav Yosef brought, because Rav Newman said, if Rav Yosef brings a new proof, you have to let me know. Maybe I'm going to change my psak. So he came a new psak. Amar lahu. So Rav Newman said to whoever brought him the news of Rav Yosef's new proof, Rav Yosef Rav Nachman. This is what Rav Yosef, the son of Rav Newman, said in the name of Rav Nachman. I don't know if he's talking about his son or he's talking about someone else who happens to have, whose father was the same name as him. Zu Eina Mishnah. This brisa is not reliable. You can't learn anything from that brisa. So meaning this brisa for Rav Yosef is not a reliable brisa. So this is not a good proof to Rav Yosef's opinion. So my time, what's the reason that he said that this brisa cannot be trusted at all? Because we know that things that were reliable, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi put them in the Mishnah. Things that weren't, some of them were reliable, some weren't. How did he know that this one was not reliable? If you say because the loan is not considered karka, but it's considered something that's movable, and movable properties are not encumbered for ksuva, Dilma Rabbi Meir. Maybe this brisa is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir holds that movable properties are encumbered and indebted for a ksuva. The Elamishum, the Amarla, or maybe you could say that the reason is that this brisa isn't reliable is because Atlav Baldvarm Didiat. The Yavam could tell his sister-in-law, who became his wife, you're not my litigant. Your ksuva is against your former husband. But your case, your argument isn't against me, it's against your late husband's estate. So you don't have any right to this money from this loan. So the Gemara says, Dilma Rabbi Nassan, maybe this Bryce isn't according to Rabbi Nassan. Rabbi Nassan has a very interesting halacha. It's a logical halacha, but he has a drasha. The Tana is willing to the Bryce. Rabbi Nassan, so let's say Reuven is trying to collect a loan from Shimon, and Shimon is trying to collect a loan from Levi. So Reuven let Shimon $100. Shimon let Levi $100. So what would happen if Levi pays back Shimon? Shimon will have $100. He's going to pay back Reuven. So what's Reuven's great idea? Cut out the middleman. If Shimon's being hard to reach, I know that Levi owes him money. I'll collect the money straight from Levi, and then I get my money back, and Shimon's considered taken care of because the money is just going straight to me from Levi instead of going through Shimon. How do we know that we're allowed to take? I don't know. I shouldn't necessarily say that Reuven could collect, but maybe the Beis Din could collect from Levi and give it straight to Reuven and cut out the middleman, Shimon. You should give it to the one who he was guilty to. So Rabbi Nassan learns that we're allowed to cut out the middleman, and since Levi owes money to Shimon and Shimon owes money to Reuven by the transitive property, Levi owes money to Reuven, so we'll give the money directly to him. So in this case, it's a different Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon was a brother who borrowed money and he owes money to Reuven. But Reuven died and the loan wasn't collected. So now, he owes money to Reuven's estate, but he's going to get Reuven's estate. So if you hold like Rabbi Nassan, he did buy the bank that lent him the money. Not directly, but because of Rabbi Nassan. So she would be the direct litigant with him. So we could explain the Brisa either like Rameir or according to Rabbi Nassan. However, we don't find any Tana who holds both of these in regard to Ksuva. But we either could hold like Rabbi Nassan or like Rabbi Meir, and this Brisa would have to hold like both. And since we don't know that Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Nassan holds like Rabbi Meir, or that there's a third Tana who holds like both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Nassan, the Brisa cannot be relied on. Rava says, Im Kain, if so, the Amar Zoin Mishnah. This is the reason for what I heard that Abai said this Brisa is not reliable, but I didn't know what it was. Now that we had this discussion, now I know why this Abai said the Brisa isn't reliable. Okay, 2 dots. Pei Beis Amud Aleph, about 7 or 8 lines down from the top. How Gavra, 82A1, the bottom, the top of the second column. How Gavra Donaflo Yivam B'Masa Mechesia. So it's similar to what we had a little bit above, a few paragraphs above. There was a certain person whose brother died in Masa Mechesia. That's a different city. And so he had to do Yibum with his sister-in-law who lived in Masa Mechesia. So he had a younger brother who wanted to stop the Yibum from happening and only have a chalitza by giving a get. Amar la, so the older brother said, my daitach, why do you want to give her a get? If it's because you want our brother's property, I'll split the property with you. Amar le, the brother said, I'm worried that you're going to do like that cheater from and Pumbedisa did. Amar le, so he said, if you're worried that I'm going to promise you and then not give it to you, I pledge to you from right now, this property is yours. So basically, there's a concept in halacha that, so let's say if there would be let's say a Tanai, a person would give a Kedushin and say, if you do 100 jumping jacks, this money is a Kedushin money for you. So what if, that day she didn't do the jumping jacks, and then someone else gave her money and said, this is Kedushin straight out, and then she did the 100 jumping jacks. Is she married to the first person or the second person? So the halacha is she's married to the second person because because she never did the jumping jacks, the first Kedushin didn't take effect. Where does it become a problem? If he says, if the first guy would have said, you're Mikudeshes to me from this very moment if you do 100 jumping jacks. So if he would formulate it that way, if let's just say he did within 30 days, let's just make it a little easier to make a time limit. So if 15 days later she does 100 jumping jacks, then the Kedushin takes effect not from the moment that she does the jumping jacks, but from the time that he gave her the money, because he says, this will be your Kedushin from this moment. So that's halach of retroactive. That's what we would call in English a retroactive kinyan, even though the thing that affected the Kedushin take place 15 days later, but because it says you'll be married to me from this moment, if it happened. So then if someone would have given her Kedushin in the meantime, without a Tanai, then it would become that she was not married to the second guy, only to the first guy. So you get into some problems if you deal with this retroactive stuff. But this Me'achshav basically is saying, is that he's telling his brother, I'm going to make it whenever it happens in the future, it's going to become retroactive to right now, that I'm splitting the field with you now. So it makes it more believable for the younger brother to see that he's really splitting the land with him. Amar Mar Bar Avashi, so Mar Bar Avashi said, Afagav de chi isa, Afagav de chi asa Rav Dimi Am Rabbi Yochanan, even though when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he told us that Rabbi Yochanan taught a certain teaching. You don't want to come? Why not? Can you stay with you? It's me, sure. You need to come with the bag. This thing must be more battery. She's watching on her phone. So you're going home in 10 minutes, okay? Only for 10 more minutes, okay? Yeah. Here, come enjoy. So when he said Pluglucha Mehashta, is that different than the case where Rav Yosef had said it doesn't take effect and Abai said yes? Is that lacha different? So Amar Mar Bar Avashi says, Afagav Techi Asa Rav Dimi Am Rabbi Yochanan. Even though when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he told us in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Omer Lechaber Lechu Meshach Parazuv Lo Tia Knui Lachala Achar Shloshim Yom. If a person says to someone else, whether he gave it, whether it was a sale, he said, lead the cow. So leading the cow, Mashicha, is a form of kinyan, you can't buy a cow in halacha with money. You have to do an act of kinyan, which you could use money for real estate. You can't use money to acquire movables. So to acquire a cow, you could lead the cow. So he said, so if someone, if Yisachar told Zvulun, go and make a kinyan Mashicha on this cow, and it will become yours in 30 days. In 30 days later, it becomes Zvulun's, even though it was in the middle of a swamp, which was impossible to get to and impossible to do the kinyan at that time. So the kinyan now is going to work for the after 30 days. So even though we know that making a kinyan retroactive like that works, it's not similar to this case. Hasam biyado, because in the case of the cow, if the seller, Yisachar, or the giver, if he was giving it as a gift, if he wanted to transfer the ownership of the cow at that very time of the kinyan, it would take effect. But he decided he wanted to make this 30-day condition. But hachal abiyano. But here in the case of the two brothers, the older brother is not able to transfer the actual acquisition now because all of the properties of the dead brother are encumbered to the ksuva. So the oldest remaining brother has no right to give them to transfer the ownership now. So therefore, even though he's trying to make a retroactive thing in the future, it'll become yours retroactively to this moment. It shouldn't take effect. So then the Gemara asks on that because Rashi says it doesn't work. But V'haki Yas Ravin Amar Rav Yochanan Lo Kani. When Ravin taught us in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that in the case of the cow, the kinyan does not take effect. So you're basing it on the fact that it might take effect, but we learned Rabbi Yochanan said it doesn't take effect. So this kinyan wouldn't take effect either. So lokasha hada amrle knei me'achshav hada lamine klei me'achshav. No, there's no inconsistencies in Rabbi Yochanan's ruling. What I said a few minutes ago applies. How do you make the condition work retroactively? If you said the word, this is yours from this moment in 30 days. Or a few minutes ago, I gave the case, if you do 30, you will be married to me from this moment if you do 100 jumping jacks within 30 days. So using the word me'achshav from this very moment, then the retroactive thing takes effect. If you don't use that word me'achshav, then no retroactive kinyan can take effect. So there is no contradiction between Rabbi Yochanan's ruling. When he said the person leads the cow, it'll be yours in 30 days, and it takes effect. That's if he said, this will be your cow from now, me'achshav, in 30 days. But if you didn't say me'achshav, the other guy would need to make another kinyan 30 days later to acquire the cow. They asked a question from Ula. What if a brother did yibum and then he split the property with some of the other remaining brothers? So Ula says it has no effect, even though he split up the properties. There's no effect because everything's encumbered to the ksuva. What if he split it up before he did yibum? So at the time that he split it up, he doesn't have any. I mean, it's true that the wife, if she would, yibum wouldn't take effect. The estate would have to pay the ksuva, but because the brother didn't do yibum yet, he's not restricted from selling it. Maybe he's not restricted from selling it since he didn't marry her yet. So the ksuva obligation hasn't. He's not liable by him marrying her. The late brother's estate, all the real estate is going to be encumbered to the ksuva. So if he said, I didn't get married yet, so I'm not doing anything. So is that going to have any halachic significance? Is the distribution of the lands, did it have any effect? So also he answered loss of loklum. It's also is no, he didn't have a right to split those properties either, or to give it away, or to split it with the other brothers. Rav Sheshes asked about this. If you did yibum first and then split it, it didn't take effect. Is it any question that if you split it the field before you did yibum, of course it wouldn't work? Because before he did yibum, he didn't inherit the brother's property. I mean, obviously he's an heir, but once you do yibum, then you actually acquire the property. There's a lien against it, so you can't. There's a special lien against it, so you can't sell it. But at least it's his. If he didn't do yibum yet, it's not even his yet. He's only an heir. He's not the bailam. He's not the owner. So shnei ma'asim havu. So they didn't ask it. There were two different incidents. First, they asked Gula. He did yibum and then he gave it as gifts to the brothers. Does it work? He said no. A different incident was he split it up and then he did yibum. Does it work? He said no. But they didn't ask him the questions in order, because you're right. If you would have asked the first question first, the second question doesn't even start. But it happened, it could have been out of order. They happened at different times. So each question was its own question. So that's why he answered both of them, because he asked the question that was asked to him at that time. Kiyasa Ravin Amar Reish Lakish, when Ravin came to Eretz Yisrael, he said in the name of Reish Lakish, whether he did yibum and then split the fields with the brothers, or first he split the fields and then he did yibum, his giving away the fields does not take effect. Same thing that Ula said. And the halacha is that it had no effect. So we had a machlokas in the Mishnah. What's the halacha of a fruit that's still connected to the ground, or produce that's connected to the ground? It isn't considered part of the real estate, or is it considered movables? In which case, the brother would have to buy a field with the value of those produce. Why should it belong to the brother-in-law? All of the late brother's property is encumbered for the ksuva. So it shouldn't belong to the brother at all. So Amrish Lakish Tani Shalah. So change the mission to say it's Shalah. The pears that's growing in the karka, it's still attached to the karka, belong to her, not him. Once the Yibum did Yibum, then she's fully like his wife. Lamai Hilchasa. In regard to what halacha? Rav Yosef Rabbi Chanina Lomer Shemigar Shebeget, to teach us that once he did Yibum with his sister-in-law, he's a full wife, and if they would want to get divorced, they need a get to get divorced, not chalitza. Umachzira, and he's also allowed to marry her. Now you might have thought that you're not allowed to marry her, since a brother, your sister-in-law, your brother's wife is an erva, and only in the case where they had no children, you're allowed to marry her because of Yibum. You might say once you divorced her and the Yibum is over, you couldn't remarry her. So Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina is saying, no, you could even remarry her if you had divorced her. So the Gemara says, pshita, to say that they're fully married, and if he wanted to get divorced, he has to give her a get. Of course, a wife gets divorced with a get. So as we turn to the next page, since the pasuk says that he has to do yibum with her, so even when Yibum took effect, maybe you would still have an obligation if you wanted to separate from her to use chalitza. Lotiskila beget el b'chalitza, you might need chalitza. Kamash Milan. So this, so Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina is telling us that the Mishnah telling us that after Yibum, they're fully wife, they're fully husband and wife, shows that once the Yibum took effect, she is no longer eligible to have chalitza. They want to separate, they have a regular get. Machzira. The second thing Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, that if they would get divorced, he's allowed to remarry her. Pshita, why wouldn't he be allowed to remarry her? So we turn to Pei Beis Amid Beis. Ma'u detema mitzvah derama rachmana la avda. You might think once the mitzvah that the pasuk put upon him was done, v'hasha taking love Israel shasach, meaning the only reason we know that to marry your brother's wife is an erva. It's an incestuous relationship. There's only a heter to marry because of Yibum. So once Yibum marriage ended because you divorced her, but let's say that because there's no mitzvah anymore, the isser of marrying your brother's wife should be in effect. So the Mishnah is telling us that no, they're allowed to get remarried even though there's no mitzvah Yibum anymore. Maybe it's also for them to get remarried. No, so there's a drasha. Once he does Yibum, he takes her as his wife. She's as a full wife, and unless he's a Kohen, he's allowed to divorce her. Because obviously, a Kohen who divorces his wife is not allowed to remarry her. But if he's not a Kohen, he's allowed to remarry his Yavama after he divorced her. Two dots. That she's fully like his wife, except that the ksuva doesn't have to come from his pocket. The ksuva comes from the late brother's pocket. My time, what's the reason? Isha, he's hiknu lamina shamayim. He didn't choose to marry her because the brother died. There's a mitzvah that he has to marry her. So because he didn't choose to marry her, he doesn't have to pay the ksuva. The ksuva will come out of the person who chose to marry her pocket, his late brother. But if the brother who died didn't leave enough of an estate to pay the ksuva, isle misheni. She has a ksuva from the second husband, because one of the reasons of the ksuva is there's an insurance policy for her. It shouldn't be easy for her husband to divorce her. So if the first husband would have given her a very big ksuva, we don't say that the surviving brother has to pay that big amount from his own pocket. He would have to pay at least the regular minimum ksuva. 2 dots. Lo yomer la hareg subasa. You can't say, a person can't say that your ksuva is here. I put aside money for your ksuva. Rather, his property is encumbered for the ksuva. My v'chein. Why does it say v'chein? Similarly, not just to a yavam, but also a yavama, but also to his regular wife. Because in the case of a yavam, he didn't write anything that I acquired will get to you, and is going to be paid for your ksuva. Aval hacha. But here, of a regular wife, the Kesuvos kanina, that he wrote in the ksuva, anything that I acquired or that I'm in the future going to acquire is encumbered to you to pay a get. Ema samchadaita. I might think that is part of the ksuva. Kamash Malan. So the Mishnah says that no, he doesn't have to pay that ksuva for her either. Okay, so we're at these 2 dots. As you see, we have a little bit more than half an hour to finish the parak, but it's time for mincha, so just about so.